Welcome to On the Ballot with Ballotpedia, where we connect people to politics by providing neutral, nonpartisan, and reliable information on our government, how it works, and where it's headed.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of On the Ballot. I'm your host, Norm Leahy. I'm a senior editor here at Ballotpedia. The 2026 election season is already well underway. And to help us explore what those races are, what we should be looking for, what we might expect in the weeks, months, and seemingly interminable election returns ahead, joining me are two very special guests. One is Lou Jacobson, who's joined us before, the Almanac of American Politics. Lou's the chief writer there now. And also joining us from the Almanac is Rich Cohen, a past chief writer of the Almanac of American Politics. Gentlemen, welcome to On the Ballot. Glad to have you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And yes, 2026, the calendar may not have changed on our desktops, but it has changed politically. Lou, you've been working on the calendar for primaries. Can you give us the sort of 30,000-foot overview of what primaries are looking like so far?
Sure. So basically, we're going to be occupied with primary watching from March 3rd to September 15th. So most of next calendar year. And starting, about 10 weeks from now, I guess. Tell me if you want me to go slower or faster, but it starts off with a bang on March 3rd with Texas. Mm-hmm. First of all, you got the Senate primaries in both parties. You got the Democratic primary, Jasmine Crockett against James Tallarico, and the GOP primary with the incumbent, Senator John Cornyn, facing Attorney General Ken Paxton and Congressman Wesley Hunt. Both of those are really competitive. Potentially the general election, depending on who wins in the primaries, could be competitive. But even beyond that, you have open seat House primaries in more than a dozen districts, thanks to redistricting. In fact, as I was putting the calendar list together a few days ago, I started to try to put down like each of the districts by number that was going to have a primary. And I had to stop because there are so many changes involving the redrawn maps that I just had to stop and just say it's over a dozen. Rich has been very involved with this to update the Almanac's district descriptions for Texas. Rich, do you want to talk a little bit about that?
Thanks, Lou. Norm and Lou, you're absolutely right that we're getting into an active political seasons. I mean, elections are about to begin, literally, as Lou was describing, at the beginning in early March, and in primaries, will be, especially in Texas, the primaries are kind of on top of us, and they will be very important, not only because there's so many of them, but because you need to kind of think about the larger context of Congress and the House of Representatives in particular. The fact that there's the Republicans, this Congress began with a 3-seat majority of Republicans. We knew from the beginning, and it's turned out that way. So that's a very difficult majority to manage for leaders and for a president with his party, and we'll see. The elections will probably change things. There's a good chance, probably better than even chance, there'll be new Democratic majority. Democrats will be in control, but even if they take control, it's likely to be still pretty narrow. We're not going to have 30 or 40 seat majorities. So every seat is important. And yes, party leaders can expect to have discipline, but, to take an example, Marjorie Taylor Greene was at one point, not so long ago, a few months ago, was a reliable member of the Republican majority. She was a big fan of President Trump. Well, things went badly for Marjorie Taylor Greene and the Republican Party. She's resigning, creating an open seat, and we'll see what happens with that Georgia seat. But the fact that a Marjorie Taylor Greene could kind of become independent of party leaders demonstrates the larger point that every seat is important when there's a narrow majority, and you can never rely on anyone to be predictable or a loyalist. If a Marjorie Taylor Greene can change, anyone can change.
Anyone can change, which is interesting because usually party discipline, at least we're told this in our school books, that party discipline is a thing. And you're saying that it's no longer a thing, especially when the majorities are thin to non-existent. But that brings me back to this topic of redistricting. And Lou, as you mentioned, Texas has got a bevy of races.
Yes.
It's
going to be a long night for us trying to track the results of these races.
But it's not just for Congress, it's statewide offices too, isn't it?
Yes.
And I think that's one thing. A lot of us are going to be focused on the midterm elections for obvious reasons. But you go down the ballot a little bit, and there are open governor's races in California, Ohio. There's going to be a big governor's race in Texas. Governor Abbott is going to be running for yet another term. So talk to me a little bit about those things that are a little bit further down the ballot that on the primary calendar or just in the back of your mind that we should be paying more attention to.
Yeah, I mean, this cycle reminds me a bit of the 2010 cycle, which was the first Obama cycle when the Republicans did really well. And the GOP that cycle won a lot of governor's seats and state attorney general seats and secretary of state seats. And it really set the stage for the next decade of statewide dominance for the GOP, including redistricting in the 2010 cycle, because they had more state levers of power, governors and legislatures. So yeah, if this turns out to be as strong a blue wave midterm as some of the signs point to, then you could certainly see the Democrats holding on and winning some of the toss-up statewide elected seats. And then, maybe potentially, depending on how big the wave is, eat into some of the more GOP-leaning statewide seats. In 2018, there's been some discussion on in some posts on X over the past day or two about a Politico article which talks about how the Democrats have a much lower ceiling now in terms of Congress, anyway, in terms of the seats that are available, just based on how about the margins from 2024, that there are not a lot of sort of easy, low-hanging fruit seats for the Democrats, and I think there's definitely some truth to that. One thing that strikes me, though, is that this is a Trump midterm. The last initial Trump midterm was in 2018 when there was a blue wave. The difference in 2018 was that the economy was pretty good. And so you had what political scientists call a thermostatic, anti-incumbent, anti-Trump sort of impact on the midterms. And I think, we'll see that again, a similar type of strength. But what you might, in addition to that, you could have a recession. We still got a year to turn around things before that happens. But if that happens, that could be an even stronger tide for the GOP to fight against, because they currently control the Senate, the House, and the presidency. So it's not like they can blame the Democrats for everything going on.
And let's talk about that.
Yeah.
There's really a lot of focus on the House, obviously. The Senate, tell me about the Senate. Rich, can you speak to me about what the Senate looks like this year?
It's a very good question. Republicans now have 53 seats. That seemed the expectation has been that they'll keep a majority. Maybe they'll lose a seat or two. But I think it's not impossible. We need to keep our eye on the possibility that Republican control even in the Senate, if there is going to be something of a wave, Republicans could be at risk of losing or having a 50-50 result, even in the a toss-up, even in the Senate. I mean, there are enough seats that could be at risk for the Republicans. I mean, start with the open seat in North Carolina that where Tom Tillis is retiring. The former Republican Democratic governor is running. Roy Cooper, he's probably going to be the favorite. In Maine, Susan Collins is Republican, clearly has been strong in the past, but it is a state that voted against Donald Trump the last for 3 elections, and it's possible that Susan Collins could be at risk. There's open seats in Iowa. There's that could be in play. There's Texas that Lou talked about. There's Alaska potentially. None of the, all of these are going to be tough. The Democrats can't rely on any one seat going their way, but there's I've listed 5, and they only need 4. So who knows?
Well, and I know it's dangerous to talk about anecdote, especially when you're using anecdotes to predict the future, which means you've lost twice already. But we are getting a lot of anecdotes from special elections that have occurred since this November's elections, when we did see something of a resounding Democratic result in those. I'm thinking, I live in Virginia. I saw it happen here. More Democrats winning in the House of Delegates than anybody expected. A attorney general nominee on the Democratic side who was fighting a scandal that in any other age would have cooked his campaign. He won. I think, by 7 percentage points, maybe. So special election races in strange places, Georgia, Tennessee, Florida, where Democrats are either winning Republican seats or they're substantially overperforming their previous numbers. What can we make of any of this, if we can make anything of it at all?
Well, I think we can definitely make something of it. I think it's a combination of 2 factors, and we don't really know what the sort of proportional mix between these 2 factors are. One is that that the Republican voters are not turning out as much as certainly in a presidential year, but even in a sort of a midterm general election, either because they're overconfident or because they're dejected. And Democrats, flip side of the coin, are very energized and will walk over hot coals to vote. So part of it is differential turnout. Part of it is persuasion, or maybe it's best described as kind of reaction to the status quo and unhappiness with the status quo, and the Democrats coming off as, we're not the people who are messing up the economy, or whatever their argument is. We don't know the sort of breakdown between what we're seeing in the results about these overperformances for the Democrats, whether that is one or the other, or it's probably a combination of both. I do expect that when we come to the November 2026 election, the level of turnout overall should be higher than it's been for the specials. I mean, a great example is this Tennessee one that was December 2nd. It was like the Tuesday after Thanksgiving. Who sets up an election then in the sort of middle of winter, right after a big long holiday weekend. But that actually showed a surprising amount of turnout, in part because both parties really tried to energize their base to get out. I believe I saw that the turnout was similar to what it was in the last midterm election. In general, Democrats have really 2 things going for them in the specials. One is that they're not the party in power, and 2 is that their coalition tends to be more eager, more reliable voters. In the past 10, 15 years, Democrats have been the party of the more affluent, educated voter. It used to be Republicans were that way, and so they had a better turnout in specials and lower turnout elections. Democrats now have that. So they have that plus the non-incumbency factor, which are both playing into how 2026, I think, will shape up.
Rich, is that sustainable?
I'm sorry?
Is that sustainable? It seems like Democrats have the energy, they have the juice right now. Can they sustain that for another 11 months?
I don't, that's what we're going to find out. But I guess I'd make two larger points in this context that you've been talking about, that Lou's been discussing, about redistricting. And because redistricting is really kind of, we've been talking about and writing about that at great length over the last few months. There's 2 points to make here. One, it's resulted, the only reason we've gone into redistricting in multiple states, including the 2 largest states that California and Texas have redistricted, with big impact in close to the 90 districts in those states. The only reason redistricting has happened in those 2 states is because President Trump is worried. He decided it needed to be done starting in Texas because he was worried, with reason, that Republicans would lose control of the House of Representatives, and that would have bad consequences for him as
including
president.
Impeachment, possibly.
Indeed. And that he hoped that picking up 5 seats in Texas would make it less likely that Democrats would take control of the House. That remains to be seen, of course. It's not at all, even with redistricting in Texas, Democrats are still in pretty good shape. But that gets to the second point, which is often overlooked, that redistricting, including in Texas, imposes its own risk. That there's no guarantee that redistricting plans will have the results as intended. That Republicans thought they were going to gain 5 seats in Texas. They may gain 3. They may, or it may not even be that much, because by definition, when you create new Republican seats, you're removing some Republican voters from what had been safe earlier Republican seats. And some of those earlier Republican seats, if things are as bad for Republicans as we've seen in special elections and elsewhere in the last few weeks, Republicans may have taken on more than they expected with redistricting, and they may regret some of the outcomes here.
And right now, even the top line numbers from the ones that have been completed, the redistricting in various states, it's about even. And the outlook for possible next states to redistrict could also be about even. So it's not even guaranteed that they would, increase the likelihood of having extra seats.
So that's why we show up. We see who shows up on election day, irrespective of the lines, because voters often confound the best plans of redistricting software these days, which is still somewhat astonishing to me. But I want to step a little bit further back to the calendar. Lou, you said that the primaries are going to go until the 15th of September.
Yes.
So in that long span of time, if you had to pick one state that is the absolute must watch for primaries, which one do you think it is? Is it Texas this March, or is it something else?
Well, I think Texas definitely has to be. And by the way, there will be a runoff if no one gets 50% on May 26th. So that's like potentially 2 different dates we got to worry about. I would say that I'll cite 2 or 3 other states that I think are really interesting. May 19th, Georgia. You've got a very competitive GOP and Democratic gubernatorial primary, a very competitive Senate GOP primary to take on Senator John Ossoff. You've got 2 open seat House primaries. So you've got a lot going on there. June 2nd, very busy day in several states, but the biggest one there is California, which is just a sort of mind-boggling. First of all, you have to remember that California has a top 2 system. So right now we have a ton of Democrats and a handful of Republicans running. I mean, it's just amazing how long this list is, including even like credible candidates. And no one on the Democratic side has really put this away at all. I mean, there are still people entering it or thinking about entering it because no one is really the favorite right now. Democrats have to worry about winning at least one of those top two spots, which could be hard if all these guys stay in and split the vote. And you have two kind of relatively top tier Republican candidates. Is it possible that they could both steal the top two spots? It's possible. We'll just have to see how that develops. But so that's California. June 9th, Maine, big Democratic Senate primary between the incumbent governor, Janet Mills, who's now running for Senate, and the oyster farmer, Graham Plattner, in addition to two very wide open governor primaries, open seat governor primaries, and a very interesting primary for the Republican-leaning District 2 House seat. Jared Golden had served in, but he is retiring. So there's a lot going on there. And then you've got August 4th, Michigan. You've got a somewhat competitive Democratic governor primary, somewhat competitive Republican governor primary, and a very competitive Democratic Senate primary for the open seat. Plus, you've got two open seat House primaries. Then, very big day, August 11th, you've got Wisconsin and Minnesota. Democratic Senate primary is very competitive in Wisconsin. And you got at least one open seat House primary. Minnesota, you've got a fairly competitive Democratic Senate primary and one open seat in the House. Then on August 18th, another state with a kind of a weird ballot system. You've got the state of Alaska, where you've got a top four primary, and then the general election is a ranked choice for that top four. Wide open governor primary for both parties, potentially a candidacy by former Congresswoman, Democratic Congresswoman Mary Peltola, who could run for governor, might even be the favorite if she were to run for that, or would make a very competitive Senate race if she gets into that. She hasn't decided yet what she's doing, and she's got a little bit of time. The primary is August 18th. And then you got a couple other sort of minor states, and then everything ends on September 15th with Delaware. So that covers most of next year.
When I make a point, I'll give a little plug for Ballotpedia.
Please do.
Because you provide real service, and you've been doing it for a number of years. And I rely in my work for the Almanac of American Politics, as does Lou. We rely greatly on the information that you provide us. For example, you do lots of things about Ballotpedia, but among the things I find especially useful is that every race in the country, and I focus in particular on the races for Congress, you list all the candidates, and you give a lot of information about every candidate, so that, for example, we now have, and we've been talking already in this podcast, we've been talking about the fact that two big states are going to have their primaries in March, Texas and Illinois, and we've had the filing deadlines have passed in those two states, Texas and Illinois. And I've been able to discover, thank you, Ballotpedia, who those candidates are, because I go to the Ballotpedia files websites that list all the candidates, and we learn about them. And in most of those cases, those primaries in March will be the winner, the ultimate winner of the seats, particularly the open seats, will be determined in March. Which is less than 3 months away, or roughly 3 months away for these contests. So readers, anyone who wants to know who might be members of taking new members in the Congress that takes office a year from now, if they want to know about them, the best place they can go is Ballotpedia. Thank you.
Well, I appreciate the plug, Rich. I really do. But I want to throw it back at you guys, because the Almanac of American Politics, when I was coming up, as a bright and naive person, This was the Bible of American politics. We were given to it and we were told to live it and learn it. And I did until the next issue came out and told me everything that I learned before was wrong. But, it's still, tell me about the evolution of the Almanac of American Politics, especially in what I think is a big step for you all in this coming year, in this year.
Yeah, definitely. So we completed our last hard copy version, came out September 2nd of this year. And it was the first one that I had taken over from Rich as the chief author. And, I just wanted to get the book out and then start thinking about kind of looking forward at, how do we adapt to the new kind of information marketplace? And what I realized is that as beloved as the Almanac is, we only come out once every 2 years. So once it's out, as it is out now, anything that happens between now and the election will not be in the book because there is no book until after the next election. So I knew we had to go digital in some fashion. And in early October, what we decided to pull the trigger on is a Substack. As your readers may know, Substack is a platform for sort of blogging, I guess you might call it. And what we did was build an Almanac of American Politics Substack, which would do a couple things. One, it would enable us to update anything in the Almanac which has changed in more or less real time. And we have used that extensively. First of all, the district descriptions. So Texas and California, Rich has written all 36 new district descriptions. I mean, obviously, we're sort of mixing and matching the previous ones, but there are changes that he reflects. And we publish those basically one a day for 38 days. And those are all up now. We're somewhere around 16 California districts, which Rich also wrote, posted, and those will finish all 52 somewhere towards the end of January. So once that's done, we'll have 38 plus 52 districts that are totally updated with the current lines, what the presidential vote would have been, changes in the demographic, population figures, and so forth. And that is something that we wouldn't have been able to do until after the next election if we just had to wait for the book. So there's that. In addition, I'm updating, first, Rich is writing bios of all the newly elected special election winners who are serving in Congress now, and we'll continue doing that. We've got those up. Those would normally not be in until the next, text version of the book came out. And I am updating, I think it'll probably be close to 50 members by the end of it, who have a current bio, but may have decided to retire, resign, may have had a scandal, may have had a major development in their political existence, which would recommend a update to their bio. I am currently going through and writing all of those, and also putting those up about one a day, probably ending in mid-January or so. Then once all that's up, and of course, if there are new states that redistrict, we'll also do that. But then next year, talking about the primaries today in this conversation, every time there's an open seat primary where one party is the dominant party, whoever wins the primary is pretty much expected to win in November. So Rich is going to write something that he would normally have done towards like the end of an election year. He's going to pre-write bios of these future member of Congresses elected, expected, well before they take office, and we're going to have those up on the Substack. All of this is going to be behind a paywall, so you have to be a subscriber to get this brand new Almanac content. Now, there's also a free component. The free component is the stuff that I have written for between 10 and 20 years, which includes handicapping of the governor's races, the Senate races, a little bit of the House races, and as well as dispatches from, like, when I travel, about political trends in various places, and previews and the results of things like special elections or the primaries. So that will be generally free to our subscribers, but the brand new Almanac content will be for the paywall only.
Can I just add real quickly, because I like each of us, Lou and I, each have a long history with the Almanac, and we're proud of the fact that at this point, the Almanac really has become the go-to place for profiles of members of Congress. It's really, right at this point, it's the only place where that profiles all members of Congress in a really substantive way. If you want to know the bios and the political histories of members of Congress, the Almanac is pretty much the only place you can go to to get reliable information.
And also for the district descriptions as well.
And I hold the Almanac up as an example to writers at Ballotpedia of this is what you should aspire to, because not only is your information, I don't want to sound like a fanboy, but I am. Not only is your information thorough, but it's the language itself that is wonderful. You tell great stories. And ultimately, that's what politics is. It's the story of all of us and how we muddle through this experiment in democracy. And of course, we will put a link to the Substack in the show notes. But gentlemen, it sounds like, Rich, you've got more writing to do than anybody knows to do with. And thanks to Lou, the taskmaster. So I'm going to let you guys get back to work. And I appreciate both of you, Lou Jacobson, Rich Cohen. Thanks for coming on the ballot. We really appreciate it.
Just quickly, it is the website is Almanac of American Politics.substack.com.
And look for that in the show notes. And please subscribe. And everyone, please check out the Almanac of American Politics early, often. It sounds like there's going to be more material there than you can shake a stick at. So again, gentlemen, thanks. I'm Norm Leahy, your host. We'll be back with another episode soon. And until then, I will see you in the digital pages of Ballotpedia.